You're about to listen to an archived episode of The Night Shift with Zeno Horoman. This is brought to you commercial-free by the Surfcast Podcast. If you're interested in more historical, educational, and entertaining surf fishing content, check out weekly episodes of the Surfcast Podcast available today on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your podcasts, including www.surfcastpodcast.com.
Today we have a pleasure of having Jamie from Flatland, the Surfcasting. He's one of the best surfcasting gurus when it comes to making bags. In the last few years, you're going to see a lot of his bags in the surf. He does some really exceptional work. He's a thinker. He's got patents on a boga grip. He's got a lot of stuff. So welcome, Jamie.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You got to kind of walk me through this timeline because it's a fascinating. You are fishing Cape Cod since you're a child. You are a Flatlander because you're living in Flatland. So just give us some background on how did this all came about.
Yeah, so Flatlander surfcasting, it started more or less by accident. In August of 2013, during a family vacation, me and my wife and kids, on Spring Hill Beach, I was out fishing the sunrise, and there was this rare blitz that happened. And as I struggled to swap out to a longer distance RM Smith jig smith, my hooks got snagged in my inexpensive surf bag. You know the story. The fish moved out of reach. I could no longer get them. And I'm there for a week, and a blitz is rare on that beach as it is. So the fish were probably in the canal, and they just happened to have some at the beach. So I missed those fish. And so I started to do some research. And I wasn't even aware at the time that there were bags out there that were resistant to snagging. Sailcloth bags. But as I started to do more and more research about this, I found two guys that were out there that had websites that were building bags. I'm sure you're probably familiar with both of them. And when I went to eventually order my first real bag, the website was gone.
I'm not even gonna go there. I kind of yeah.
I'm not going to name names at all, but it was gone.
In those days, it was kind of a wild west of.
Well, it was, and then I went to my number two choice, and literally the same thing happened. I get ready to order a bag, and the website's gone. So I'm back to square one, and I guess I kind of learned that most of the people that had built bags kind of did it as a hobby. And they had a real job, and they would come home from work. I figured, why not just try to do my own? I'm pretty much a tinkerer. I don't know, kind of got like a mechanical engineering mind, I guess. And at that time, my wife, she was really preoccupied because she was working her full-time job, and she was also earning her master's degree in pharmacology and toxicology. And our kids were teenagers, and they were doing their own thing. So I had time on my hands. I had a full-time job. I was in the bicycle business, import and distribution, but I had time on my hands. So started to do some research about the whole thing. Ended up destroying 2 cheap sewing machines in that first bag. Pretty bullheaded. Wasn't gonna let that defeat me. Hold on a second.
I got to back up a little bit because I read your kind of like history, and some people's like, oh well, there's this guy in Wisconsin making bags. What they don't realize is that you're like a professional walleye angler, St. Croix pro staff guy doing like the national circuit.
Right.
I mean, I swear to God. I mean, I looked at you as you're the bag guy. I did not realize that your fishing skills are on par with your bag making skills. I know you don't tell people, but I think people would like to know about it. So fill me in.
Yeah. So I used to, I fished with my good buddy, Rudy, who now lives out in Colorado, and we would fish on the Cabela's National Walleye Circuit. And then there were a few other local circuits that were in Illinois and Wisconsin, but Cabela's was the main one that we fished, and that took us pretty much all around, I would say, the Midwest, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, those states, stuff like that, Kansas. So we would fish this tournament series. And yeah, you mentioned St. Croix. We were on the St. Croix pro staff, and we were on pro staff with Storm Lures.
Yeah, my point's got a little bit of a creed there. It's not, you're just not a guy that just builds bag in some shed like a Unabomber out there.
No, not at all. No, I had a pretty good amount of fishing knowledge, but not necessarily salt.
Well, that is true. So, okay, so let's go back to what's the hardest lesson here in trying to come up with I'm assuming at this time you're just trying to make a bag for yourself.
Yeah, that was really the hardest. That was the initial thing, is that I just wanted to make myself a bag. And I did ultimately succeed. I ended up, having to learn and buy a industrial walking foot machine. And as I tell my friends, that first bag probably cost me $2,500.
Well, yeah, you realize most people just don't combine an industrial machine when they just want to make something.
They don't. So it kind of, what happened from there is that I posted that first bag on my personal Facebook page, and as chance would have it, a gal that I was friends with from Ripon College, where I went to school, she saw this bag, and she then reached out to a fraternity brother of mine that I'd lost touch with 25 years ago. His name was Craig, and he lives down in Jersey. And he saw the bag, and I'm like, turns out he's a surfcaster in Jersey. I'm like, can I build you a bag? You want to try it out? So yeah, so he started walking Jersey with it, and things kind of exploded from there, as people would see the bag on his shoulder and start to ask questions about it.
But there's still a long progression to where you are today. And this is a normal progression for someone who's obviously, that you spend a lot of time designing and all that. But still, I know that building stuff for yourself or making stuff for yourself is a totally different level than making for other people.
Right. So there is a big progression. And it really was, that was probably around, I want to say that would have been late 2013, somewhere in that time frame, that Craig got that bag and started walking with it. And I had enough people contacting me just out of the blue, asking if I could build them a bag and stuff like that, that I had been doing a few bags here and there. And if you saw my early bags, they looked pretty much like every other bag that was out there, a bag with a pocket stitched on the side, pork rind holder stitched on the other side, stuff like that. I was really I was learning. And, but I knew that there was a show coming up, and I had seen it on Facebook and stuff. It was the Jersey Shore Surfcaster Surf Day show in 2014. I sent an email off to a guy named Josh, and I remember he messaged me back, and he's like, "Yeah, we'd love to have you." And that was pretty terrifying to know that, here's this guy.
After you met Josh and saw that he was 16 feet tall, you were
exactly.
even scarier.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like the greatest guy in the world.
He is. Yes, he is. Yeah. But that's when things kind of got real, when I was going to attend a show. And so ended up getting a rental car and drove from Illinois to Jersey. And it was one of those things, that first show where everyone's like, who's the new guy? So I did. I showed up there with a handful of, traditional bags that we're all familiar with from being around. But what had started happening at that show is that guys were coming up to me and saying, can you build me one with a pocket on this side and a camera holder on this side? Or can you do one with a pork rind holder over here and a pocket over here? And can you do this with a leader wallet here? And I just realized it was overwhelming at that show. But it was such a good learning process to listen to everyone there. And so drove back to Illinois, 24-hour drive pretty much, a lot of time to think, and realized that everything that I've been doing for myself and for the handful of guys that I've been building bags for and honing my skills, I pretty much had to scrap it all. I knew that I had to start over. I had some sewing skills, but I realized that in order to carve out a niche, produce what people wanted to fit their needs, that I had to start over again. So that was kind of it was a difficult part of the drive home, but it was also energizing because I realized that what everyone was doing in the past wasn't necessarily what everyone wanted. It was what they were using because it was all that was available. So it was a starting over point.
What was your idea then to give to the customer? A different way of order? Was your idea to give them a bunch of
Well, the
designs?
idea that I came up with was the modularity, the idea of modularity, where I would have a base bag that could accept any accessory, as well as a belt loop adapter that mimicked the side of a surf casting bag, so that any accessory that could go onto a surf casting bag could in turn relocate to the belt. So that was really the system, what the system boiled down to. Once I knew that system, once I had that in my mind of what I wanted to do, then I knew that I also wanted to give the customers a little more degree of personalization in the construction of the bag. So that's where it comes down to allowing for certain options that I thought that I should allow. Like they could put a leader wallet on the outside of the main flap, or they could put one underneath the flap, because that was all stuff that I could bake into the build process without reinventing the wheel. And I could allow them to have, if a guy liked orange stitching and trim, yeah, I could give him orange stitching and trim, stuff like that, to personalize it to match his rod wraps, stuff like that. So
To match his personality, maybe.
And you know what? People want that.
That's great.
Surfcasters, they are not all black and white.
You're absolutely right. Why should we just get whatever's given to us and said, that's what you got to have? You're right.
Yep. So
Go
ahead.
Let me ask you a question. Like, how important is customer feedback when it comes to designing this, at least this modulation?
Customer feedback is extremely important. And that's why the shows, those initial shows, and even to this day, shows are so important to me, because I'm probably not a very good listener, but I try to be a good listener at the shows, because people give me so many good ideas. People will tell me, I want to have an accessory that will handle this, or an accessory that'll handle that. So I do need to listen to people and make sure that if I get enough requests for a certain accessory, then I'll look at designing something. But if it's someone that says I need a bag that's a 1/4 inch taller and 1/8 of an inch wider than what you're doing, no, I can't do that. But when it comes down to, I need a water bottle holder that's going to handle my 20-ounce Gatorade bottle. Okay, I've got 20 requests for that. Time to do something.
What was the hardest lesson? Was it the material, or because I know that the material is very difficult to work with, and for most of us, they use the product. We don't think about it. We just open a bag and go fishing. But I've seen people trying to turn a bag inside out when it was done. It's a nightmare of a process. I don't think people know what is involved to make a bag. Right.
Well, that for me, that's crazy. I mean, when I look at one of my bags, that's like the Back Bay bag, for example, it's one of my more expensive bags, and it's one of the smaller bags that I build. And the reason it's one of my more expensive bags is because it's about 40 minutes to turn that bag right side out, because bags are built inside out and then they have to be reversed. And I wear leather gloves, and I've got an old stool in the shop that I turn upside down. I've got a leather cover on one of the legs of it, and it helps me to turn the bag inside out. But yeah, that's a real difficult physical part of the job. But in terms of like challenges to actually starting Flatlander surf casting, you have to really tear the engine apart and realize that it's not all sailcloth and thread. One of the first things I did when I started, and I give myself a lot of credit, is I contacted an accountant and I said, what do I do? How do I start? I know that there's taxes involved, stuff like that. So I never had a formal business plan, but I did work with the accountant when I realized that it could be an actual business. And he helped me to establish that tackle bags, like fishing lures or fishing rods, they're subject to federal excise taxes. So all of a sudden, I now have to not just be a fishing tackle bag builder, I have to keep track of IRS Form 720's federal excise taxes, and I have to file quarterly. And I have to maintain IRS deposits, and I have to make federal estimated tax deposits and state tax deposits. And you live in Massachusetts, where are so many orders coming from? Massachusetts, not like in Illinois. No one's buying a surf bag there. I don't have to collect state taxes. Massachusetts, all of a sudden, I've got a whole new layer. So I'd love to say that I get to sit behind the machine and sew for 8-10 hours a day, but there's a big part of the whole Flatlander process was learning how to make sure that I was compliant. And last thing I want to do is have some federal agency knocking on my door and you're not paying something on a bag.
When it comes to custom bags, and I know that most of us who've been around kind of know the benefits, but
sure,
for someone who's just either starting, or doesn't know what the hype is all about, why should someone invest in a custom bag?
Well, in terms of the custom bag, and I when you're saying when I
say custom bag, I don't mean like something that fits a profile. Listen, when I started fishing, it was a Bronco bag, and then I gravitated. I would call a custom bag something that it's built to last, not necessarily that fits exactly a niche the way I wanted to do it.
I think that the biggest thing that people have to realize that goes into a custom bag, and it was a huge challenge for me, when I got going on this, is that once I had a lot of the nuts and bolts nailed down, then you start to get into the whole process of sourcing the materials to do a custom bag. And some of the stuff, it sounds simple, but in rudimentary, you learn about sewing machine styles, you learn about needle styles. Well, you have to use a specific needle for sailcloth. And when you put 2 layers of sailcloth down, now you've got a whole new problem. And when you have to stitch a corner seam on that, where it's 4 layers of sailcloth, now you've got a whole new problem. So there's a lot of learning and a lot of machinery that's necessary in order to be able to construct a bag properly, so it's not going to fall apart. I mean, I had to learn about thread. I sourced my thread from a company in Germany because they make this thread that's great for like America's Cup sails. So it was a big learning process. I had to learn about webbing, material composition. You've got polypropylene, you've got polyester, you've got nylon. What's best for saltwater? What's going to fall apart in the sun? What's going to be most durable? So, that all of that stuff goes for like the thread and the trim. And, people don't realize that sailcloth itself, it has multiple weights. It has multiple weave patterns. So I had to work with all kinds of different companies from the get-go to make sure that I was sourcing the right products. And so many people worked with me. I went to, I think it was 2016 was the first show that I went to in Charlotte, North Carolina. And this was a Industrial Fabrics Association show. And I met with Velcro from New Hampshire. I met with CNC companies from Australia. I met with all kinds of companies, and I just learned. I just took into the sailcloth companies were there. The thread companies were there. Everyone that I needed to deal with, stainless steel, hardware. I was able to, because I had a business license and I was looked at as a legit company, I was able to now get involved with some of the highest level components out there, so that when I built a custom bag, I knew that it was being built with as good as I could get. And so, yeah, so that's kind of some background of just like material sourcing. It was a big process. I mean, flying all over the country. I attended multiple shows to get the right stuff for Flatlander bags. Most guys or gals, I have a lot of all kinds of customers across the board. Once they get into the sport, and I think all of us go through the process of, we start with a basic bag, and then we get hooked, and then we're really into the sport, and then we start to, probably a similar path to what I took, research what's out there because we're not happy with what we've got. And a sailcloth bag, I mean, you're not going to be able to put a hook through that bag unless you're using a hammer. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to get into a blitz and all of a sudden you've got the hook stuck into some nylon material. So if you're serious about, walking the shoreline, wading, wetsuiting, whatever, it doesn't matter. A good bag is something that's going to last you for years. So I would say that is probably the number one reason that someone should look at it. If you're serious about the sport, I had a professor one time that said, the cheap and the uneducated buy everything twice. And that was where, you buy the cheap bag and now you haven't done the research. You didn't do the research to start with. So you started out with a cheap bag and then you did the research and got yourself a good one. So
I think to some extent we also tend to use the word custom in a wrong context, because, your bag or most bags that are out there should really be called a good quality bag instead of custom, because they're not necessarily custom fitted for you. There's a customs option and there could be a custom bag, but a really good quality bag is head and shoulder above your regular bag that you buy at Sports Authority. Doesn't even exist, does it? But the Dick's does.
Right.
Because those are mass market bags, and whoever designed them has nothing about surf fishing. It's mostly for carrying sinkers to go to the beach and some bait, and there's few slots. So you get the bad slots, bad plastic inside, bad canvas, rotten. So the whole thing is just not something that you are going to gravitate, especially as you become a better surfcaster. So your bags are really are more of a quality product than custom. Our word custom is a little overused in this kind of.
Right. Well, even, for mine, for example, like my tubing. I mean, who thinks about the tubing in their surf casting bag? Okay. I would never have either. But for me, I had to learn about material composition of tubes and what would be best for someone that was fishing cold weather and warm weather. And then I had to find a manufacturer that could manufacture draw tubing to my specifications, my thickness, my material compositions, and cut them to length for me.
Oh, just take my money. Will you just take my money? Because I can't think on that level. That's a whole other level. Hot and cold plastic. I mean, seriously?
Right. Well, that's where I had to go if I wanted to try to be as good as I possibly could. And I knew what I wanted, and I know that what I want, it's going to probably be more picky than the average person. So if I can make myself happy, then maybe that's good enough. I'm not sure, but I get into the minutia, and that's where it came down. I mean, I just had 2 pallets of tubing shipped in here last week, and all
I
cut
did
to
see
my
the trailer
size.
on the internet backing up to your house.
Yeah, it's crazy because I've got to get a lift gate truck. I've got to get pallet jack. It's crazy, but it's the way it goes.
Does it ever get old seeing guys on the beach with a nice fish with your equipment around their waist?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. And I get, and here's the crazy thing is that I hear a lot about it. I mean, I have fished a handful of days this year because I am in the shop constantly, but I hear it. I hear it from Craig when he's down fishing Jersey. I hear it from my friends that are fishing on the Cape. I saw a couple of your bags out there today, or someone will send me a picture, and no, it never gets old. I love it.
Is that the biggest joy out of this process for you? I mean, business is business. We all like business, but I know. I mean, I run the Surfcaster Journal magazine, and I know
Sure.
Tommy and I love the shows because we get to shake hands, and people tell us how much they enjoy the content that's made for
Right.
them. So I can understand how does that make me feel personally.
Yep. Well, I love the shows, stuff like that, and love being around the people. But I would also say that I really love what I do. I love being in the shop. I love it when I take a bag and take a picture of it, and people probably see those pictures because I've got a cedar shake backing that I will usually take a picture of the bag before when it's done and ready to go off to the customer. I'll send them a picture of his bag, and they love that. And the one thing is that when I see those pictures on different groups on Facebook or wherever you're on the internet, I know that I took that picture and that guy's proud of that bag.
Are your bags available to order only in a customized version, or do you have like a line of bags where people can order like or is there always a wait for it? I mean, at different times, it's probably different.
Yeah, I tried years ago to do a bag that was available all the time, and it was impossible to maintain because the orders that came in for the custom, let's say custom bags where, it wasn't black stitching, black thread, stuff like that, those orders would take up all of my time. So I never had any time to build inventory of like a stock bag, so to say. So I did do that for a while. And whenever I attend the shows, if I bring bags to a show, those are all built to like a stock pattern. But I used to have those available throughout the year. I tried to, but I couldn't maintain it. I'm literally capped out. And I say that I'm in the shop 7 days a week, and I'm usually out. I usually get out to the shop probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm usually back in around 9 o'clock at night. So it's 7 days, probably 10 to 12 hours a day. And that is to keep my head above water.
And you do everything yourself. So
I do it 100% myself. Yeah, when my wife, she was working at a pharmaceutical company back in Illinois, and this would have been in early 2017. She got notification that she was being transferred. She could do the transfer out to Cambridge or take a package and see you later. So that's, we ended up out here, and as fate would have it, we found this great house on the South Shore that had a nice barn, I guess you'd call it, a shop outbuilding on it. And the guy who had built it, it was an electrician. And I mean, he had all kinds of pneumatic lines that I need for a lot of my equipment. I've got every outlet of every voltage I could desire. But the downside is that it's in a residential area. So when you say I do it all myself, yeah, I do. I can only hire family members. I can't have outside employees working here. So it's me, myself, and I.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. I never even thought about it. I mean, I know you like what you do, but I never realized that you had constraints even if you wanted to.
Even if I wanted to, I'm constrained by it because I love my shop. I've got probably about 1,000 square feet total that Flatlander takes up. And, but I can't have outside employees to help me. So, and I really don't want to rent any place, or how do I say it? If I wanted to grow, I know I'd have to start to do some outsourcing, and I don't know if I'm ready to cross that bridge yet. I'm too much of a control freak.
as I have heard.
Yeah.
What would people be most surprised about Flatland?
Well, I think when they come to the shop, I think that people are probably most surprised in the depth of what goes on here, the business, the way it's been, the way I've built it. And I think that's probably the most surprising thing to people is it's not just one sewing machine up in the shop. There's this year I even brought in a CNC. I have my own CNC fabric cutting system up in the shop. I think they'd be surprised that for a one-man operation, the level of technology that I've poured into the company to try to make the best that I can. The other thing that they're really surprised about when they come up to the shop is that I don't have bags sitting around. You come into the shop right now, there's one bag that's sitting here that had been if there was going to be shows this year, it was one that I started to build for a show. They're always surprised that I don't have shelves of bags.
That happens, but I'm not. Yeah. I'm not going to hold out hope for shows this winter.
It's for me. I've already made the decision that even if there are, I won't be there this year.
I just think it's irresponsible in some way. If that's how you feel, I can understand that. And I'm not going to question who will and who won't. I'll leave that discussion for another time.
Right.
Everybody's got that.
Yeah, I had to make a decision early on because I have to pre-build inventory for the shows. And when I saw the direction that things were going, I decided to devote my time to try to accelerating customers' orders and not building show bags. So I usually have to do a give and take on that. And I try to build some slack into my schedule so that I don't push bags further out of line in order to attend shows. This year I've decided to put it on the back burner.
Where do you get your design idea? Who's the inspiration?
In terms of the modularity or in terms of just the bag design in general? Overall.
You need to have modularity is one thing, but I mean, as a whole business idea of yours, you had to have some inspiration, not necessarily by a person, but in general sense, like where do you get your ideas? Because I just saw that you have a patent for the boga, right?
Yes, I have a patent for the boga holder, and that's a design patent. I've got a utility patent on the system.
Right, I'm saying system. That had to come out of somewhere. I mean.
Yeah, it's I get asked for different stuff by people, and so my.
So you try to give them what they're asking for in your own way.
What they're asking for, I have to try to take an idea that someone is asking me for. First off, I've got to make sure that it has legs, that it's not going to be something that I'll build for one person and never build it again. It has to be able to be sustainable. And from that, then I have to be able to create a design that is functional, that I can actually sew. I've had a lot of people, like, for example, that will ask me for my boga grip holder that can attach to a bag. Well, I can't do it because the attachment goes right where the metal is for the boga grip holder. So there's I have to make sure that I can functionally build something as well.
What's the best way to contact you? How did the guys find you? I used to have a website, and now it's basically just a Facebook.
Okay, well, that was a big thing for me, is that I've never had a website, and that was is something I struggled with. Is whether or not to have a website, and I know it'd be really helpful to show my product, but for now, I use my Facebook page, my Instagram page. Those have worked really well. I tend to update my Instagram page more frequently than Facebook. One thing that I found that was really helpful is Google makes a thing called Google Docs. And I was able to build a whole order form on Google Docs. And I have a link to it on my Facebook page. But you have to access it through a computer, like a laptop. You can't, for some reason, Facebook doesn't allow it to work on a phone. But so I've got a Google Doc there. And that is a way that people can, kind of build an order and get a quote from me, stuff like that. That's the only way.
A lot of people don't have websites these days because the social media has kind of overtaken that whole concept.
They have, but I still think I'm a little bit behind the eight ball, because if social media ever does decide to, put a fee on people like me that are doing stuff like that, it would be really probably good to have a website as backup. But for now,
it would also be good to have Facebook stock at that time.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But the other thing is, for me, is that it's kind of a limiting factor. I am capped out. I can't do anymore. And I know that if I had a website, it would add to my problems.
Well, you would also have to kind of update the website, because, the static page that you make it once, it's pretty and you're like, ooh, This is nice. And then 2 months pass by and you're just looking at same pictures. At least the Instagram and Facebook, it's constantly updated.
Right. It's constantly updated. Yeah. And the one funny thing is that on my Facebook page, people will visit it. And I don't think I've updated my Facebook page since I did a post about COVID-19. It's been 7-8 months since I've done anything on Facebook. The main thing that I utilized my Facebook page for is I was getting I would get a lot of wellness checks. People would contact me, put a bag in line, and then they would email me constantly. And don't get me wrong, I love talking to my customers, but they would be checking, hey, where am I in line? Where am I in line? When is it going to happen? When am I going to get it? And so I've realized that I could create another thing called a Google Sheet. I pinned that to my Facebook page. So that's really what I use my Facebook page for. The top post there is this bag progress chart.
Nice.
So people that are in line,
to the top, so people can see where.
Yeah, they can click on the link and they can see their initials and their bag. That's
it
honestly
works. I mean, that's all you really need, honestly.
I know, and you know what? People use it. I mean, I have guys that will message me, "Hey, I see my initials at spot number 31. I'm glad to see I'm moving up the list." So people, they use it. So Instagram, though, is probably the best place to actually see pretty pictures.
It's a much more of a visual medium than Facebook is.
It really is.
Plus, my kids tell me that Facebook's only for old people now. So
yeah, Instagram, I think, is where, in terms of me, that's where it's at right now.
Hey, I accept being old. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
What the future holds for Flatlander?
With the accessories and stuff like that in my bags, they can buy a bag from me, and then, it's not uncommon for a guy that's bought a bag 2 years ago to contact me for an accessory later. I think there's always a little bit of concern, like, is he going to disappear like everyone else has? I would probably say that, right now I love working, and I've got no plans to retire or anything like that. But I think that ultimately I'll probably start taking some longer breaks. We do have our family place up in northern Wisconsin, and a lot of, my wife, she's the major breadwinner of the family, and she can work from anywhere now. So I would imagine we'll probably take some longer stretches of time and hang out up there, but don't plan on shutting this down. I plan on keeping it going.
Well, we do wish you well, because you are working, as you said, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Those are long
No,
hours.
I do. I need to take some. I need to take some time and just get on the water.